A very good morning, everyone. My name is Abhirami, and I'll be your host for today. Thank you all for joining our PAM webinar. If you guys can hear me fine, it would be great if you could just let us know through the chat or give a thumbs up. Perfect. Great. Thank you. So, yeah. Before we begin, let me just quickly take you through a few housekeeping announcements. So, yeah, on the right side of your screen, you'll be seeing few tabs, starting with panelists. You can see the details of the session speakers and the host over there. Then there is the questions tab in which you can shoot out your questions to our speaker. And then we have the handouts tab where you can check out our latest resources on PAM. And finally, you can use the chat option to interact with your fellow attendees as well as let us know in case you face any technical difficulties. So without further ado, let's get started. So today's session will be delivered by our solutions expert, Ganesh Chelappa, about how the right PAM strategies can help you create a constructive path towards enabling a solid zero trust security approach. So yeah, over to you, Ganesh. All the best.
Yep. Thanks, Abhi, for the intro. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen. And thanks everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar session. I believe you all should be able to see a screen that has the title of today's webinar, which is Roadmap to Zero Trust Security with a Strong PAM Strategy. So before we start, I'll just quickly give you a snapshot of all the data breaches that have happened in the last few years. So as you can see that data breaches has become a serious issue in terms of cybersecurity space, and the volume of data that is getting stolen is also exponentially increasing with each and every cyber attack that is happening. So more than 70% of such data breaches are related to privilege abuse. So there are many ways in which a privilege can be abused. So the most common methods are phishing or social engineering or insider threats or delivering a malware or using a remote access attack. But the bottom line is, regardless of what mode of exploitation is used, at the end of the day, it is the privilege abuse that gives them the attack surface for both internal and external users. And the privilege abuses are basically a starting point for any type of a cyber attack, and it is led by unmanaged standing privileges. So by unmanaged standing privileges, what we refer to is let's say somebody needs access to a server so that they need to do some operation that helps their day-to-day job. You just give them a local admin right or a domain admin right. And that in itself is called unmanaged standing privileges, because without quantifying what kind of an operation they are trying to do, you are providing them with ultimate privileges without any form of mechanism to fall back or demote that particular user from having that extended privilege. So excess privileges always brings in a lot of excess risk. The risks being these access grantings are not being monitored or reviewed periodically, and some of these access providers stay permanent. So if you make somebody a local admin or a domain admin, unless you remember to go back and remove them from the respective groups, they are going to probably have full-on domain admin rights. And undetectable lateral movement also happens. Like, for example, somebody needs to fix a software problem on a server, and you decide to give them domain admin rights so that they're able to do whatever they need to do to fix that particular software problem. Maybe they need to install some other tools, or maybe they need to uninstall some components. But regardless, giving them domain admin rights means they could do the job of troubleshooting their software, but they can also get lateral movement. Like, they could go to some other machine, they could go to your Active Directory or to your DNS. So that type of lateral movement most cases it goes undetected. And the problem is with those lateral movements. So you give them access with a particular perspective for a particular business case, but they're able to leverage that access to gain lateral movement into the entire network. And you will also have, it's quite common for employees and personnel to leave the organization at some time or move from one team to another team. And the challenge is while they are working for your particular team or an organization, they might create accounts for their usage. So if you take database administrators, it's quite common for them to create local database accounts. If you take network engineers, it's quite common for them to create local accounts in switches or routers or firewalls so that they could get easy access because it's their job. They're going to be working on these devices day in and day out, and it makes sense for them to be able to have an account that they're able to use as and when it's needed. But the problem is when they quit the organization, how would you know how many such accounts are sitting in your infrastructure? Is there even a way to know that, like, for example, somebody named Ganesh was working for your company a couple of years back, and while working, they created all these local accounts called Ganesh in all the places, and then they left the organization. So your typical log management solutions or SIM solutions or even monitoring solutions will not help you because these accounts were created many years ago. So that again is a part of excess privileges being granted and having to face the consequences of those excess privileges. So how do you tackle these challenges? There are two commonly used solutions at present. The most prevalent ones are the least privileged access and zero trust security model. So we'll look at both these design and approach, and we will talk about how you can get to the point where you could effectively leverage these two cybersecurity concepts. So we'll start with least privilege. Least privilege basically refers to having minimal rights for all of your users to do their day-to-day operations. Well, yeah, without disrupting their day-to-day activities and operations, we should be able to give them access, but it should be bare minimal. So, for example, if somebody is working for a system administrator team and they would like to troubleshoot a printer, there's no real need for them to have full-on domain admin rights or local admin rights or even admin privileges to the printer itself. So the concept of least privilege refers to the state where all of your users have the bare minimal rights or read-only rights as and when it can be applied. And when they are in need of an elevated privilege, they should have a mechanism to put in a request, get an approval, or maybe go through your proper IT service management module to get a proper workflow of approvals or get an incident raised, and then proceed in getting that just in time elevated privilege. So, if you take any IT enterprise and their infrastructure, you would basically have five components. So those components are users, both internal and external users. The devices they use could be company-owned laptops or desktops or mobile phones, or it's probably their own handheld devices if you are following a BIOD model. And then you have the network. So they might be working from home or they might be working in your corporate LAN or wireless LAN. So the network is the third component. And then fourth, you have the applications. You will have a lot of applications for different purposes, probably procured from different vendors. So the users use different type of devices. Well, actually, different users use different type of devices to connect to different areas of your network to access different type of applications. And finally, with these applications and access, they are going to consume data. So either it might be your ITSM solution or a monitoring solution, or it's just a regular server that somebody is accessing, but it's always about data. At the end of the day, it's about data. So these are the five components that would be involved in any form of an IT infrastructure. And the objective of least privilege is to identify all of them. So you identify who is the user. Is there an external contractor or an internal user? What device are they using? Is it their own laptop or is it corporate laptop? Which network are they coming from and which network are they connecting to? Maybe they're working from home or they're working from a coffee shop, so they're using a public Wi-Fi. And from there, they're trying to connect to your corporate network, probably using a VPN or a jump server you provided. So essentially, you have to be able to identify these five components, classify those components based on these data points, like where they come from, who they are, what device they use, and determine the posture. If somebody is sitting inside the office and using the corporate network with their corporate laptop provided by the company and accessing an authorized application, we could pretty much say that the posture is going to be low risk because it's a standard operation they've been doing for all these years. But if that's not the case, then the posture is going to go high. Like probably it's too risky, or if it's a non-sensitive application, but still they are connecting from an external network, then it could be classified as medium risk. But the objective is to be able to identify, classify, and determine the posture. Based on that, you are going to provide them with the right set of privileges. So if someone needs to troubleshoot a printer, the right privilege is just access to the printer and not anything else. It shouldn't be more than what is required for the users to be able to perform their job. So, and to achieve the least privilege access, you would also have to conduct audit periodic audits to identify how many privileged accounts are there in the first place. Like every box, every device that you have will definitely have a privileged account. So you can't have a device without a privileged account. If it's a Windows box, there's a local admin. If it's a network device, there's going to be an administrator account. So you have to be able to audit those accounts periodically. You have to be able to assign the right set of privileges to the right set of people, which is bare minimal, just just enough to get them going about their day-to-day business and day-to-day operations. And then you implement a control process where they have a way to request you for elevated permissions as and when it's required. So in a week's time, I will probably need domain admin access just a couple of times. So on a normal day, my account is not a full-blown domain admin. I don't have access to any other shared accounts, but as and when it's required, when I want to connect to the domain controller or connect to the DNS, I should have a way to put a request, get an approval, and then have myself provided with elevated permissions, and then remove any unwanted privileges or accounts. Like I said, ex-employees, people moving from one team to another team, they all leave a lot of accounts and marks. So those accounts should be eliminated, and remove any credentials hard coded in places. So it's quite common for IT administrators and other staff to hard code credentials inside config files, scripts, connectors, or even inside applications sometimes. The problem is we cannot keep track of all of these places where they keep hard coding these accounts. So the only way to solve this problem is to get rid of hard coded credentials and replace it with a better mechanism so that those scripts, config files, connectors, they all do their job of either connecting applications or helping applications in performing their operation. But the objective is to make sure they all work smoothly without credentials being hard coded in places because it can quickly get out of control. And also, it's a challenge if you change the credential, there's just no way you can go to all those places and all those config files and update the password. So it's a good practice to make sure credentials are never hard coded in any place. And then finally, you need to be able to enforce application and command control. Meaning, it's quite common if somebody asks for access, it's quite common for us to just give them access. I mean, what is giving an access? We bring it down to a simple yes or no question. Like if I need access, I get it, and now I'm able to log in. But how much privilege have I got? Like, can I uninstall something? Can I delete something? Can I remove a drive from this box? So application and command control touches on those areas where when you give access to somebody, they're able to remote into a box maybe or open an SSH session into a firewall. You should be able to control what they can or cannot do during that session. And that's part of the application and command control process. So to recap, You have to focus on user, device, network, application, and then finally the data. And if you identify what entities they are, or where they're coming from, and if you determine the posture of them, you would be able to have an effective least privilege model implemented. So you can get started by looking at PAM solutions that are able to authenticate users in a context-based adaptive mode based on like where they come from, what they're trying to access, and you can see if PAM solutions can help you in getting anomaly detection or advanced event correlation options where based on your users usage pattern, the PAM solution should be able to determine whether it's a normal behavior or a risky behavior when somebody does a particular operation or gains a particular access. And also, you can make sure you're notified about anomalies in real time. Like someone works for a network team and they always use network devices, they connect to them, they maintain them, but one day they log into a database. That's a risky behavior. There's no need for a network engineer to be able to log into a database, at least on a normal day. Maybe once in a while it could be needed, but it's definitely an anomaly uh, considering the regular operation. So that type of capability is something you will need. And then we will talk about the next one, which is zero trust security. So in least privilege, the objective is to make sure everyone gets access but with the bare minimal permissions. That's least permissions, least privilege. But in zero trust, it's about not giving any permissions at all. It's zero. You don't trust anybody, don't trust any network, don't trust any application, don't trust any traffic coming into your network, and always verify. So for this type of a concept to be applied, you will need to verify every jump, every connectivity, and every hop. So it starts from granting access and identifying a trust score based on the given access. You should be able to assess the risk and say, okay, so this access has a potential risk of 75%. Or if somebody is looking for access to a UAT environment and you give them access, and then the solution should be able to give you a number saying, okay, this is not very risky. It's just a developer environment. There's no real data there. So the risk is going to be probably less than 5%. But the objective is to get to a situation where you're able to determine that risk assessment. And then again, like I said in the previous concept, you have to be able to determine the posture and you have to be able to constantly identify the user and entity behavior. So if people log in and work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's their regular business hours. And if there is any deviation while gaining privileged access, like somebody logged in at the middle of the night and they're trying to get into a firewall, that's something that should be identified as an anomaly and a real time alert should be sent to you because it's so unusual that someone is logging in at the middle of the night and it's so unusual that they who never ever have gone to a firewall have decided to log into a firewall. That's the heights of a risky behavior. So that's the type of a solution that you will need that can automatically track the user and entity behavior and take action based on the determined risk assessment. So this is a workflow that gives you an idea of how enforcing zero trust can change the entire chain of events. So the user connects to a device. With the device, they connect to a network. And once they're in the network, they're accessing an application, which in turn gives them access to the real data. Now, if you do have zero trust, so you will be able to determine the posture of the user and determine the posture of the device. Like, is it a corporate device? And if it is, does it have the latest antivirus software installed? Does it have an anti-malware solution? Because all of these are the weakest link in the chain, and any of these link can be used for a potential cyber attack. So if I have a let's say I have a corporate laptop, but I'm quite frequently visiting different cafes and I connect to public Wi-Fi and somehow I accidentally ended up having a malware in my laptop. And if I hook this laptop into my corporate LAN, then it's going to basically spread like a wildfire. It's going to reach all parts of our corporate network. Now, enterprises to tackle this challenge have antivirus solutions installed, but they are not always 100% effective. So you have to take additional precautions on how can I secure my network from my users' laptops, even though it's company owned and it's corporate owned and it always has the latest patches and whatnot. So that's something we will discuss in the coming session, the following slides, but it is part of the zero trust enforcement. So in zero trust, you're going to identify and eliminate standing privileges. You're going to review those privileges on a regular basis, maybe once in every quarter, year. You should be able to do that, not manually. Obviously, you will need a PAM solution or any PAM solution that can help you, but the objective is to be able to review. In fact, for audits, they ask you to provide evidence of this review. So you need to be able to do that and also rotate your passwords, keys, and certificates. So these are the keys to your kingdom, right? So you have to make sure they're changed every 30 days or 45 days. And you can enforce role-based access control for each user. Based on the team they belong to, they gain access. Based on their designation, they gain access to certain devices. And that would be the enforcement of role-based access control and time-based release. So if they need access by 10 a.m., there's no need for them to have access by 1 p.m. Once they're done with the job, the access should be revoked automatically. And you should be able to record and audit every single event that happens through privileged access. Anything that happens through privileged access, meaning an admin or a root or a manager account, is considered as a privileged operation. So that needs to be fully recorded and audited, and enforce MFA, enforce multi-factor authentication everywhere it's possible. So not just for them to log into their laptop, but then for them to connect to your network. Once they're inside the network, again, when they try to SSO or authenticate into an application, enforce MFA. And after logging into the application, if they access the data just to consume it, it's fine. But if they try to download the data, if it is required for them to download the data for their day-to-day operations, again, bring in MFA. So you have the chain and you know the link, and you make sure MFA is enforced in every link of this chain. And we'll see how ManageEngine's PAM 360 can help you in everything that we saw so far. So ManageEngine's PAM 360 is our unified PAM solution. It has just-in-time privilege elevation capability where you can automatically elevate a user into a local admin group or an Active Directory security group, thereby giving them special privileges on a temporary basis. So the user gets elevated into a group and then demoted automatically after 30 minutes or after an hour based on the approval you've provided. And the solution also has secure remote access. This helps you with the problem that we just talked about of malware. My laptop is infected and I am going to connect to my corporate firewall. How do you stop my laptop's malware from spreading to your corporate firewall? You need a PAM solution sitting in between, acting as a gateway. So ManageEngine's PAM 360 does just that. You don't have to worry too much about your users and their laptops and their devices and their security position or security standard, because no one is going to gain direct access into your corporate network or the servers and devices inside the corporate network. PAM proxies the connections. So it's ultimately PAM that connects to all the areas of your network, and it only tunnels the vision to your end user laptops and desktops. So because of this, even if there is a malware in any of their laptops, it's not going to reach your corporate network because they're not connected. Even without having connectivity, the user is able to actually access a device through this proxy, or PAM becomes a gateway for that. And then have smart access workflows. You should be able to hook your solution with your incident management or ticket management solution where everything is in one place. If somebody needs access, they raise a ticket, their boss approves it, and the user comes to ManageEngine spam. They try to gain elevated privilege. They are asked for the incident number. When they supply the incident number, PAM makes sure to validate that incident against your own ITSM solution. and lets the user gain privileged access because it's approved by their boss. So that type of a workflow is required, and ManageEngine's PAM 360 has this solution. It integrates with all the leading ITSM solutions in the market, and then have user behavior analytics. So, like I said, you can only determine the user and entity behavior based on raw audits. So, when you deploy a solution like ManageEngine's PAM 360, it learns the usage pattern and it gets better every day. The more you use the tool, the better it gets because of our deep learning or machine learning engine called ZIA. It reads all the raw audits and identifies who's accessing what, when, why. All of this information, the data is being crunched, and the more data it generates, like your PAM solution generates, the most efficient this anomaly detection is going to be. So these are some of the core capabilities of our PAM 360 solution. In addition to that, you have the regular secret vaulting. You have a secure location to store your credentials, rotate your SSH keys, and have the privileged session management all handled in one single place. So now we'll take a look at a couple of use cases or scenarios to understand how does this work in practical life. So far, we saw about the concepts and what those concepts mean. Now we'll look at the real world use cases. So the first example, let's say there's a network engineer, they're on vacation, they're working on an incident that requires them to connect to the firewall, and they have to basically allow an IP address. Somebody has raised a request and it has been raised as a ticket, and the ticket is assigned to this network engineer, and the engineer is trying to allow an IP address in the firewall. But the problem is the engineer is on vacation and they're actually working from a hotel. They're using the hotel's Wi-Fi and their personal device to connect to your corporate firewall. Now, allowing them direct access would be the biggest mistake, obviously. So how do you approach it? If you have ManageEngine's PAM 360, first they would authenticate into our PAM solution, and they would use their own Active Directory or LDAP or SAML or any a federated credential. Then they would be challenged for MFA. Once they're inside PAM, they will be able to put a request to access the firewall. They will be able to supply the ticket number, and the ticket number is authenticated against your own ticketing system. Maybe you're using ManageEngine's own Service Desk Plus or Service Desk Plus on cloud, or ServiceNow or Jira or 100 other ITSM solutions in the market. But regardless, PAM can authenticate against those ticketing systems, validate the ticket, identify from what time to what time the access should be given. Maybe the network engineer only needs 15 minutes access to add just one line to give that one IP access. So, and finally, even though the engineer is connecting from their personal device to your corporate firewall, the devices don't have any direct connectivity. So the user only has connectivity to PAM, and PAM only has connectivity to the firewall. So PAM basically connects to firewall and tunnels the vision to the network engineer sitting at his hotel. So without compromising your corporate security, you're able to give them access and also give them access on a controlled time frame. So that's the um, scenario. And this is a screenshot of how it'll look like when the user logs in from their hotel Wi-Fi using their hotel Wi-Fi. They will be able to select the start time, end time, and basically the admin, or like you could have admin approval, like which is a manual approval, or you can set up a ticketing system approval. But the objective is to make sure the engineer gets access only to the right device for the right time with the right level of security, where everything they do is fully recorded and you always know what was done during that access into the firewall. The next example is where you have a DBA. The DBA is working remotely and they need access to an SQL database. Maybe they want to do some maintenance work, they want to run some queries. The problem is they are working in a coffee shop and they often change devices. It's not like you can register the MAC address of that device and give access only to that device because they keep changing. So in this scenario, ManageEngine's PAM 360 would allow you to give them context aware access. What that means is, well, they need to get to a database. which is running on, let's say, a Windows box, obviously they don't need admin rights to the Windows box. They shouldn't get admin rights to the Windows box because the box itself doesn't belong to the database team. It probably belongs to the IT security team. So essentially, the user will be able to log into the Windows box as a regular user, a non-admin user, or a guest user, but then they should have the ability to run Microsoft SQL Studio with elevated permission because that's their job. That's their scope. That's their territory. They should be able to run Microsoft SQL Studio as a full-on admin because they're going to drop some tables or delete some databases, maybe. So the point is, based on the scenario and based on the user, PAM 360 will be able to allow them just enough permissions into the remote access. So just read only. They can't uninstall anything. They can't delete anything. They can't map a drive. But once they logged in, if they try to run SQL Studio, they will see this option that says run as PAM 360's privileged account. So what happens is Microsoft Studio alone runs with this elevated permission, which means the user is a real DBA or a sysadmin or a sysDBA in that database instance, and they could do their day-to-day operation without compromising your corporate security, without compromising that device security, and you have full record and full audit of everything this user did in that SQL session. So these are the two scenarios just to give you an idea of how it works on a real life situation. And then finally, this is just to show you the advanced request release workflow we have. You can, like I said, you can have people requesting for access or requesting for a temporary password or requesting access to just one application. Maybe somebody wants to run a Todd application and nothing else. So you would be able to authorize them to run and execute and use just Todd and nothing else, and have these approvals and controls provided on a time frame. So it's only for 30 minutes or 20 minutes or for 1 hour. And all the other bells and whistles around it, like auto approval, grace period. What if somebody couldn't finish their job in time and they want to extend it? Do they have to call you? Or maybe you can set up an additional 15-minute grace period. So all those capabilities are available in ManageEngine's PAM 360 solution, and the secure remote access provisioning allows them to be able to jump into different devices and do their activities with full session recording and shadowing capabilities. They could do file transfers if they like, and those file transfer also goes through the gateway design and audited. And you can hook ManageEngine Spam 360 with our UEBA solution and business intelligence solution. This will allow you to get powerful capabilities like anomaly detection that we discussed earlier, advanced event correlation capabilities that we discussed earlier. So to summarize, you have to make sure that you basically eliminate accounts that are scattered across your infrastructure. You have to stop using the traditional approach of giving full trust, full access, giving full blown accounts. You have to embrace a zero trust approach where you eliminate standing privileges. There shouldn't be anybody part of a domain admin group. Honestly speaking, there should only be a couple of system accounts or service accounts that should have domain admin rights. No user needs to have their own account being a part of a domain admin group ever. And finally, make sure you have access control workflows in place that are complemented by deep learning and machine learning based engines that can help you in identifying anomalies and even remediate problems and rectify issues as and when it happens. So that would be the agenda for today. Thank you so much for patiently listening to me. Now, if you guys have any questions, you can post it in the questions panel. I'll be happy to read those questions and answer them. All right, so let's go to the questions. What are the first actions you should take to protect your privileged accounts in the shortest amount of time? Deploy a PAM solution would be the answer, because ManageEngine's PAM solution can automatically discover accounts from all of these places. Maybe you have a Windows machine or a Linux machine or a network device or a database. But a PAM solution can go to all these places, identify which accounts are residing in which areas. So based on the accounts identified, you will be able to take action. Maybe you can, like, if you find an account called Ganesh sitting in an SQL database, you have to be informed about it, and PAM can do it. And once it informs you, saying, "Hey, there's an account called Ganesh in an SQL database, but this guy doesn't even work for us anymore. So what are you going to do? You're going to delete that account." So you can deploying a PAM solution will be the first step for you in consolidating your accounts. It tells you how many accounts are there, where they are, and helps you identify is it really needed. And in fact, this is going to be there for service accounts as well. Let's say you have a lot of service accounts and you have no idea why they are there. Maybe they are used somewhere in some service, but you don't want to take a risk of deleting it and finding out which application breaks. So with PAM, you don't have that problem because PAM is going to do that job. It's going to go to all of the places, identify in which machine, in which service your service account is being used. So because of this data, you will be able to know which service accounts should be kept and which should be deleted. In fact, we'll give you a nice little report showing you about all the service accounts you have and in which place, in which Windows services or even Windows scheduled tasks your service account is currently being used. The next question is, could you explain the importance of securing privileged access for third-party vendors and contractors? Obviously, it's quite common for external users like vendors and contractors requiring access. Maybe they have they're providing you a service for managing a software or some area. So how do you give them access? So it's the same process we talked about in the webinar. You don't give them direct access from their own devices, not a full-blown VPN. Instead, you use PAM as a gateway. They only get access to PAM. And once they get inside PAM, we have functionalities where you designate certain machines to them. And in those certain machines, you designate certain accounts to them. And in those certain accounts, you designate certain privileges. So if a vendor needs to log into a Windows machine and execute an application and do a job, you're not going to give them a local admin. That just doesn't work. But with PAM, you're giving them limited remote access without connectivity. And in that remote access, you're giving them limited account permission, not a local admin, but maybe a read only account or a guest account. With that account, they log in and they are able to execute only one application, not everything, not go to control panel. That's the kind of approach you should take in terms of tackling external contractor and vendors requiring access. Software development team requires local admin access while developing application. How this can be handled? That's a good question. So if you have a software development team and if they need local admin rights to develop applications, you could give them local admin rights. Obviously, this is one such scenario where you cannot say, no, we won't give you local admin rights because they can't do their day-to-day job anymore. So give them local admin rights. That's perfectly all right. The only difference is you're going to give them local admin rights through PAM. So what that means is everything they do as a privilege action, like deleting or adding or creating or installing, everything they do is going to be recorded. And you don't even have to keep constantly watching it. You don't have to be vigilant and like monitor every small action they do. It's all done by the system. The system is going to do the recording. The activity logs are going to be generated. The deep learning engine is going to determine the risk posture and give you a risk assessment score, or actually alert you based on the risk assessment score. So if those developers are really using the local admin account to really develop the application, they write code, they compile, and they run, then everything will go smooth. The only difference is in the background, everything is recorded and audited. In future, if you have to go back and investigate, you have options for that. And if somebody deviates, they are a dev, they are logging in as a local admin that they're uninstalling something, then you will be notified. The PAM solution will take the responsibility of crunching this huge mammoth data and determining which one is risky and then inform you about it. So that would be the way to go about providing local admin rights to a development team or a software engineering team. Um, Let me just switch to the chat window. I see some questions in the chat window as well. We are recording the session. Is the PAM agent based on all workstations and servers? Yes, we have PAM agent for two purposes. When you deploy the PAM agent, it will help you in discovering the accounts in those workstations and servers. Um, and also, it will allow you with this self-service privilege elevation feature, where if somebody wants to run one particular app with the admin privilege or an elevated privilege, they could do that. And that's the purpose for which we built these agents. But the agents are optional. You only need agent if there is no connectivity to that machine. So it doesn't matter whether it is a server or a workstation. As long as you have connectivity, like the PAM server has connectivity to the machines, you don't need agents. Even without agents, PAM will be able to rotate passwords, give them remote access, record the sessions, and all of it. So you only need agents when you are dealing with independent workstations or devices residing in demilitarized zones or isolated networks. That's when you need the agent. The next question is, we are currently using ManageEngine tools. Can you please send me this presentation? Yes, we will send this presentation and also the data sheet of the product so you will get an idea. The next one, what are the different type of PEDM and least privilege capabilities offered by PAM? So for PEDM, we've got two major capabilities. One is called just-in-time elevation. In just-in-time elevation, the way it works is simple. My name is Ganesh. I have an account called Ganesh, which is a domain account given to me by my company. Normally, my account is a regular user account. With this, I can log into my laptop, maybe. I can read emails, but I can't go to domain controller or do anything domain admin. So one day I need domain admin rights because I want to uninstall something or install something or make some changes in Active Directory. So what do? I log into PAM 360. I request for privilege elevation. So I'll choose my account and say request elevation, and my boss will get an email. He will actually get a notification in his iPhone or Android app. We have those apps. And in the app, he will see Ganesh is looking to elevate his account into domain admin group from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. If my boss clicks on approve button, PAM 360 is going to take my account, add it into domain admin group, but exactly at 10 a.m. Not now, not immediately, but at 10 a.m. It'll wait for 10 a.m. By 10 a.m., it will add me into the domain admin group. But by 11 a.m., it's going to remove me from the domain admin group automatically. That's the just-in-time elevation feature. As and when it's needed, my own account or a shared local account gets elevated and then demoted. That's the first option. The second option is the self-service elevation feature that we talked about, where I am given access to AD, but inside AD, I just can't do everything. I can only run Active Directory users and computers app. In that app, whatever I do, whatever changes I do is obviously fully going to be recorded. So these are the two core features that are part of our PDM module, privilege elevation and delegation module, just-in-time elevation and the self-service privilege elevation feature. So we will be sharing this presentation, and also perhaps we'll add the link for those two PEDM capabilities. That would be helpful for you guys to review it. And if you guys are interested in a personalized demo, our team will be happy to give that as well. Let me check other questions. Dev team required access on their local systems, not on VDI or RDC systems. Perfect. For people needing local admin rights in their own laptop, you can use PAM to achieve it. But a better way to achieve it is to use our endpoint management solution called Desktop Central, because ultimately you're talking about user laptops. User laptops travel, it goes out to different networks, a lot of things happen. People install a lot of softwares in those laptops. So that's why we have a dedicated product called Desktop Central, which is our endpoint management solution. Because in those laptops, you're not just going to deal with access. You need to worry about what softwares are installed. You need to worry about what patches are installed in those machines. Is the antivirus updated? Is all the Windows security fixes updated? So all those things need to be handled. So it's better to use our endpoint management solution rather than PAM for dealing with end user laptops. And then the next question is, can a PAM solution integrated with Kubernetes to fetch keys, passwords, tokens on need? Yes, we have dedicated scripts, plugins, even PowerShell implementations you could use to periodically or automatically retrieve credentials, SSH keys on tokens, and deliver them. So we have many customers using it for dealing with the Kubernetes, RabbitMQ, Docker, and all of it. We have RESTful API feature basically. So with the RESTful API, you will be able to programmatically retrieve secrets, keys, even TLS certificates as and when it's required. Let me go back to questions tab again, see if there are any other questions. Yep, can a PAM solution be integrated with Kubernetes? I've answered. Awesome. I think I have pretty much covered all the answers and all the questions. But just in case, if you have more questions, you guys will get an email with the link for this presentation and probably the recording as well. So you can reply to that email if you have any more questions, or if you would like to have a personalized demo to see how our ManageEngine's PAM 360 solution works. Feel free to drop us an email and we'll be happy to help you out. Once again, thank you so much for joining this webinar. I hope this was informative, and hopefully we'll meet again in the next webinar. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time, and have a wonderful day.